Okay, so you're going to be coming to the Philippines possibly for the very first time. What are some of the things that you can do to make the transition as smooth as possible so that you don't run into any issues with money or with tickets or with holdup at immigration? That's what I'm going to cover here in this video. Something that hopefully will make the trip over here more of a dream as opposed to a nightmare. Okay, here comes the video. All right, so the whole inspiration for doing this video was from you guys. It's from questions and comments, emails that I've received, and primarily it's got questions about money and then another couple little nicky-nacky things that I want to cover with you also, so that if you do decide to come over here for your retirement or for a visit or for an extended visit, maybe we can knock out a few of those questions here in one place. Okay, so I just got a message today from a gentleman that's very indicative of the questions that I received. And that is, Paul, how do I move my money from America to the Philippines? And then how do I get it into my pocket or into my hands? Very good question. I'll start off by saying, number one, I keep almost, not all, but almost all of my money in my American bank account. So my Social Security check is directly deposited into it every month. And then any revenue that I receive from the YouTube channel, that also goes directly into the American bank account. Number one, it's insured up to $250,000. Not that I have $250,000, but it's only insured up to about $9,000 or $10,000 here in the Philippines. So if I exceed that here in the Philippines, then if something goes wrong, I'm going to lose everything except the 10 grand, and good luck trying to get that. Also, if I exceed $10,000 or something to that effect here in the Philippines, it notifies the IRS in America, and once those boys get a hold of you, who knows what could happen. So I play it cool. I just want to be safe rather than sorry. And the way that I do it, and I've been doing it this way for 8 years, and it's yet to fail me, and that is this. Money is in my American bank account. I use a transfer service. There are a number of transfer services that you can avail yourself of. There's Remitly, there's Wise, which used to be TransferWise. There's Zoom. There's a litany of others that I'm probably unaware of. That I would say research a little bit on your own and pick your poison. Figure out which one fits your budget and your plan the best. The one that I use is Zoom, and they've been great. The only thing not so great is they've raised their rates. So I'm not going to switch it though, because I have this theory that if it ain't broke, why fix it? And so that's what I do. How does that work? Okay, well, money is in the account in America. I go on my app, a Zoom app. I have it on my phone and I have it on my computer. I like to double up on everything, by the way. In case you lose your phone or your computer breaks, you've got backup. That's very important to me, and hopefully you'll take note of that yourself. When it comes to money, I actually have 4 options of being able to get my hands on some when necessary. That did not happen overnight. It took some time, but I'll go over those 4 options for you anyway. All right, but let's stick to the point here of getting that money from America to here. And in this video, I'm just going to use the example of Zoom because that's the service that I use. So I will go to my Zoom app on my phone or my computer, and I will tell them I want to move over, we'll say $2,000. And I hit the button, and within 5 seconds, it says, your $2,000 is on its way. Here is your code, your one-time code. And that is an X with 10 digits following it. So when I get that message from them, Right after I transfer, we're saying in this example, $2,000, I screenshot that immediately. They also email it to me the same time that I'm taking that screenshot. So I've got it in two places. Why do I take a screenshot? Because it's simply easier when I go to pick up the money that I've got it right there on my phone in my pictures, because it's a 10-digit code that I'm going to need to have. I guess the other option would be to write it down on a piece of paper. Okay, so how do I get it and what's the process? I Zoom the money to myself, not to a bank. My wife can also access it, and we can Zoom it over to her in her name if she needs to. And so I will go to any money pickup place. You can go to a bank here that says Zoom on the door. I use an entity called Cebuana. There's another one called M. Mueller. There's Western Union. You get the idea. There's all kinds of places here in the Philippines that do money transfers, pickups, and remittances. Obviously, with all the OFWs and Filipinos working abroad, they're constantly sending money over here. So think of it that way, just sending money, but I'm sending it to myself. Now, when I walk into Cebuana, they will want me to fill out a form with my name, my address, my phone number, and that Zoom number. The amount of money, is it in USD or is it in pesos? I send over USD, and I sign my name, I turn in the slip, and they will give me the money back in pesos. And the conversion chart is right on the door, or on the wall rather. And you can also ask the teller, what's the rate today? Because it fluctuates and it changes daily, sometimes hourly. I don't sweat the small stuff. If I know that it's going to be, let's just call it 55. It's a little higher right now. It's around 57. But if I go in there and I say, okay, $2,000 times 55, I'm going to be picking up 110,000 pesos. And that's exactly what I'm going to get, a stack of cash. Now, once I have that, I can choose to keep it at home. I've opened up a bank account here. And so what I will do is I will take that. I have a joint account with my wife. I will take a portion of that money and I will put it in my bank account over here for safekeeping. I will also peel off 20,000 off the top because that's my rent, and I put that in an envelope, and then the rest goes into another envelope, and that's my monthly budget. It's set aside for me to use every time I leave the house. I take some money out of that envelope, put it in my wallet, and off I go. I have the option to use my debit card. If I want to go to an ATM, I can go there. My bank allows me to pull out $500 a day, and I've only used my debit card out here maybe 3 times, and that was in sort of like an emergency where I just didn't have the cash on me, or something cost more, or I got myself in some kind of pickle. Anyway, I needed some money because I pay a fee. There are other banks and credit unions. Charles Schwab comes to mind. I think Navy Federal Credit Union. I don't quote me on that. But there's a number of credit unions and financial institutions that will reimburse you on any fees so that it's free. Okay, so now I've got my money here. Well, when you come here, you're not going to have a bank account. Let's talk about that for a minute. A bank account is a real pain in the you-know-what to open over here. So my experience has been that you need to be in the country at least 6 months, have what's called an ACR card, and another form of identification. They want at least 2 forms of identification. Passport, driver's license from your home country should work, but sometimes it doesn't. I use a place called Commerce Bank. I have found them to be the most foreigner-friendly bank in all of the Philippines. I used to have an account with BDO. I won't put you through that terror story with them. I did eventually open with them, but it took months for me to do it. So the only option I had when I first got here was to keep my budget in my apartment in 3 or 4 different locations in case somebody broke in. And thankfully, I've never been robbed. But that's how I handle that. Now, what else have I done? So I've got the transfer service set up. I have the option to use my debit card. I also have this joint bank account that I have set up with my wife. So since my budget over here generally is $2,000, what I've been doing recently is I have been sending over $3,000 because I want to put $1,000 away in our bank over here and get that up to about $9,000. I think we're at about 4,000 or 5,000 right now. I'll keep an eye on that. I do not want it to exceed 10,000 because that will flare them up and send a letter to the IRS that I've got in excess of 500,000 pesos, I believe it is, and whatever that converts to at the time. And I don't need to bring myself any attention to myself or unnecessary attention. The reason they do that, my understanding is to make sure that it's not illicit funds, from any kind of nefarious activity that might be taking place. And then my other option is that my wife, and this may not apply to you, of course, but just covering every base that I've got here, my wife has a separate account at BDO. And so her money from her little YouTube channel goes directly into that. I can also, I got actually 5. I can also, I've set up with my bank to do a bank-to-bank transfer on the computer from $1 up to $100,000 for a flat fee of $40. And so when I purchase land, for example, I think it was $40,000 that I paid for that land. I bought it from another expat. I transferred that money. It wasn't international. It was domestic. It was to his bank in America. And I did it via that transfer service that I set up with my bank. So I can also send the money internationally. And I think about a year ago, I floated a test balloon and I sent myself $1,000 via the bank-to-bank transfer on the computer, and it went through. The reason I did $1,000 as a test balloon was because they tell you about 3 or 4 times, by the way, once you push this button, this money doesn't, if it disappears, we're not going to help you. You're on your own. So I've always been leery of using that, but it is yet another option. So I have 5 ways of getting my money into my pocket, because the last thing I or anybody else wants to be is over here without any money. Why do I have so many options? Well, because things can go wrong. What if my bank is shut down and I need the money right away? ATMs out here don't always work. They run out of money or they're under maintenance. I've gone with my wife one time when she tried to get some money out of BDO. We had to go to 3 different locations before we found one that actually had A, open, and B, had money in it. And so just a word to the wise. Now, the other thing that I want to do on this money deal is, if you're listening still, please listen to this. You're going to have a phone service back home. It's either going to be, I imagine, it can be anything, I suppose. I had T-Mobile at the time, Verizon, Sprint. What I want to touch on is that some entities will not accept an internet-based phone system. I think Google Voice, Viber, they all go over the internet. I have what's called Magic App, not Jack, but Magic app. And it's $1.99 a month. And I can make phone calls. Well, my bank actually accepts an internet-based phone number. Zoom does not. So, if I have a question, and I'm going to bring that point up right now. When I came over here, I had T-Mobile, and I think it was $50 a month. I have no clue what it costs to have a phone plan in America today. And when I went, I called T-Mobile up and I said, hey, I'm going to be going over to the Philippines and I need to have my phone service work over there without paying through the nose by the minute. And they said, well, you can get an international plan and it goes from $50 to $60. And I wanted to keep that phone number alive for the sole purpose that I could call my family and they would know who I am. And if I came over here, I was unclear about SIM cards and phone numbers and what the charges would be. So I wanted to keep that alive. I've since canceled it a long time ago, but the importance of me having that activated is going to be taken home right now. When I first transferred money via Zoom, they called me on that phone number. I was not expecting it. In fact, I did a test balloon the third day I got here. I said, I want to make sure the Zoom thing works. That was my critical worry, was that something would go wrong. Well, I zoomed over the $800. That was the number, $800. And my phone rang. And I picked it up and it said, Mr. McGill, yeah, this is so-and-so with Zoom. We are just going to ask you some security questions and make sure you're you before we approve this transaction. I said, fair enough. So I spelled my last name. I gave him my birth date. I told him my first dog's name, whatever other questions that they had. And he said, okay, great. Well, we appreciate, you being a customer and you're approved. Yeah, I'm going to send the approval code over right now. And boom, there it was on Zoom. To drive home my point, that month, I met a couple of expats who were wringing their hands and getting ready to pull their hair out because they hadn't done anything with their phone number. And they did the same thing. I'm not saying it was with Zoom. It may have been with another entity. But they went to move their money over, which they had. And guess what? They couldn't get through on the phone and they didn't get approved. And it took each one of them over 1 month of emailing back and forth to get the whole thing straightened out. Now, what I would do if I was you, since this was all 8 years ago that I did this, and I imagine a lot of things have changed, simply talk to whatever entity, Remitly, TransferWise or Wise, Zoom, whoever you use, and ask them that question. Can I use an internet-based phone to receive calls from you, or do I need to keep a regular plan? I know that one guy that I know went back to America recently, and he just reactivated T-Mobile because he got tired of the brain damage. He would call his credit union, they would take the phone. He would call somebody else, they wouldn't. It had to be the original number. Plus, that's the number that you put into, in this case, Zoom, for them to verify you. I then, after a couple of more transactions, I called them up. And I said, hey, are you going to keep calling me ever again on this phone number to verify anything? And they said, no, sir. You've done 2 or 3 transactions with you. Everything's gone okay. We don't see the need for it. So I canceled T-Mobile and got rid of that $60. Speaking of making phone calls and talking to entities, I would highly advise, or actually I would really push you to call every one of your banks and your credit card companies and let them know you are not going to be in America or Australia or Britain or wherever you're watching this from. You are going to be here. And that way, when you go to use the debit card, use the credit card, you're not declined or turned away. Very, very important. Another very important thing when moving money over here is to have duplication of everything. I just explained the 4 or 5 different ways I've got of getting money, but let's go to a worst case scenario. You'll always want to take a picture of anything and everything that pertains to you and keep it on your phone. Picture of your driver's license, a picture of your passport, picture of the front and the back of your debit card and your credit cards. My phone has what's called a secret vault. So I can put all those images in my secret vault, and that requires another passcode to get into it. I know it's not fun or comfortable to have all that personal information on one device that someone might be able to get into, but when the time comes, if you do indeed lose your credit card, debit card, or it's stolen, expired, etc., you've got all the information, the code on the back, the whole enchilada, and it just makes it a lot smoother if you need to make an adjustment or request them to help you. All right, well, I think we've beat that pretty much into the ground. Opening up a bank over here, again, is no party. It's really uh, who you get behind the counter. I do not recommend having your Social Security check, your pension, your annuity, or whatever it is being sent directly from your institution, let's call it Social Security, to a bank here and deposited every month. There is what's called a proof of life letter that is required once a year. And I can't tell you how many guys have not been able to receive the mail for that. And their Social Security checks got cut off until they got it resolved. Did they get it resolved? Yes. That's one of the reasons that I keep money over here also. I've asked myself, okay, what if for some reason my Social Security check just doesn't show up one day? There's some kind of issue or problem. Well, I've got, like I said, that other bank account. I've also got my wife's bank account that I can deal with, and I've also got the debit card. So different ways to access the money. There is a couple of other nuances. You need to have at least 6 months validity on your passport. If you're reaching the expiration date, now would be the time to go ahead and renew your passport for another 10 years. You can also get a card. The card would fit in your wallet. It does not act as a passport, but should you lose your passport or it become damaged beyond repair, that card that you get will help you expedite getting yet another passport through the consulate in Cebu or wherever you're at. Manila, Cebu, can't do it here in Dumaguete, but you get the drill. You got to get in touch with the embassy and or the consulate and get that resent back to you. Okay, so we've covered money, we've covered the passport, calling the credit cards. There is another little nuance that you need to have on your phone, and that is called an e-travel. I don't know what the rest of it would be called. It's an e-travel app that's on your phone. So you'll need to go to etravel.gov.ph, and within 72 hours of flying over here, they will send you a QR code. I recommend screenshotting that and having it on your phone because you're going to need it to, number one, board the plane. You're going to need to show them that you did your e-travel. And it asks your medical history, your name, your address, and some other things. It takes about 5 minutes to fill out. And you're going to need to show it at immigration. Okay, last thing that I'm going to touch on is what's known as a throwaway or a onward ticket. When you arrive in the Philippines, you get a free 30-day visa. If you're just coming here for a couple of weeks and you've bought yourself a round trip ticket, you're fine. If you're coming here and you plan to stay beyond the 30 days, you are going to need to be able to show them that you're actually leaving the country before 30 days. I know it doesn't make much sense, but it is what it is. So there's a couple of three ways to do this. Number one, you can just buy a cheap ticket, say to Singapore, and maybe you find something cool. I think when I did it, I bought a ticket for like 36 bucks going somewhere. And it was on the 15th of the month if I came here on the 1st, so that when I came in, I showed that I was indeed going to be leaving the Philippines in 15 days, even though I wasn't. That's why we call it a throwaway ticket. There's also a service called onwardticket.com, and that will suffice. I think it's $14 or $15. Be very careful with that because there's a couple of scammy sites that look just like it. So you'll want to verify that you've got the actual one. It's onwardticket.com. One time I bought one called My Onward Ticket, and they sent me an email or they sent me a message back saying, thanks, you've been scammed. That's when I was in America trying to get back home at the end of COVID. Oh, what a joy that was. Okay, so I've had people not necessarily argue with me, but have debated with me about the necessity of this onward ticket. And they'll say, well, Paul, I've gone up and no one's ever asked me to see that. They'll ask it at the ticket counter when you go to board the plane. They'll ask to see it possibly at immigration. And I've got guys that have said, never asked me for it. And I say, good on you, because they've asked me every time for it. In fact, one kid was questioning it. Why I did this, I won't get into the story. It was my first trip over here. So that's what I wanted to cover in this. I took longer than I wanted to, I'm sorry, but I wanted to make sure I touched every little nuance that I know of. Transferring money over here, I keep, you do what you want to do, all my money in the States where it's insured. I feel it's safer, and I can always get my hands on it via the transfer service, via the debit card, and the others that I mentioned prior. I won't be redundant. I'll try not to be too redundant. The e-travel, the onward ticket. One other quick thing, packing. What kind of clothes do you bring? If you are a big boy, okay, bring lots of clothes, because if you're a big fella, and you know if you are or you aren't, I'm not going to put height and weights on this. You just know. You're not going to be able to find anything over here that fits you, at least not in the sleepy little Dumageddon. Big boys need to bring plenty of shirts, plenty of shorts, plenty of pants. When traveling and you want to be safe, keep your wallet, if you use a wallet, in your front pocket. I actually am wearing shorts right now that have a zipper on all the side pockets and even the front pocket, as well as a flap that goes over it. So safety first, right? All right, well, I hope you found this somewhat helpful. I hope it answered some questions. And feel free, if you've got suggestions for the guys or something that I missed, right there in the good old comment section. And I will see you crazy people in my next video.